The disappearance of Pan Am Flight 914, which we will discuss in this issue, is actually one of the most famous airplane mysteries. The incident took place on July 2, 1955. Pan Am Flight 914 departed from New York with 57 passengers and crew on board. The aircraft continued its flight to its destination, Miami. Weather permitting, the flight was scheduled to arrive at the Miami airport in approximately 3 hours. But Pan Am Flight 914 suddenly disappeared from radar. No mayday, no distress signal received. Air traffic controllers panicked and assumed the worst-case scenario. A search party was immediately dispatched and a large-scale search was conducted. However, despite their best efforts, Pan Am Flight 914 was not sighted and no wreckage was found. Finally, an official press conference was held and it was reported that all the crew and passengers of Flight 914 were killed. Inquiries from the bereaved families cannot be answered because nothing can be found. Pan Am Flight 914 seemed to have been closed as a missing person case. But to our surprise, the aircraft believed to be Pan Am Flight 914 reappeared. The accident took place in 1992. 37 years after the accident, and was discovered in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, 2,000 kilometers from Miami. What happened to Pan Am Flight 914, and where and how did the crew and passengers wander for 37 years? Let's take a closer look at the truth behind the disappearance of Pan Am Flight 914. First, let's look back once again at the circumstances surrounding the disappearance in 1955, the beginning of the case. The disappearance of Pan Am Flight 914 occurred on July 2, 1955. Pan American Airways was an American airline founded in 1927, and for about 50 years from the 1930s, it operated as the flag carrier of the United States in both name and reality. A flag carrier is an airline that is so well known that it represents the country. However, Pan American Airways went bankrupt in 1991 due to financial difficulties. The aircraft used for Flight 914 was a Douglas DC-4, a 4-engine propeller-powered airliner developed by the American company Douglas. The Douglas DC-4 first flew in 1942. In Japan, it was used by Japan Airlines in the early 1950s as its mainstay aircraft for domestic flights, and the plane was so well known that it was depicted on aviation stamps of the time. In the world, it was used by Pan American Airways, Cathay Pacific, Qantas, and other airlines around the world as their mainstay aircraft on medium and long-haul routes. However, with the arrival of its successor, it was retired from major airlines in the early 1960s. The Douglas DC-4 also retired from the forefront of the world's passenger airliners. Pan Am Flight 914, carrying 61 passengers and crew on board a Douglas DC-4, an aircraft rarely seen today, was scheduled to depart New York City as scheduled and arrive in Miami, Florida, after a 3-hour flight. The weather was fine that day, but Flight 914 disappeared without ever arriving at the Miami airport. When it suddenly disappeared from radar, no distress signal was sent out. The New York Supervisor's Office also reported that Flight 914's radar response had disappeared mid-flight. It was suspected that the plane had crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, and a search was immediately launched. However, neither the passengers nor the wreckage of the plane were found. Without any evidence, it was reported that Flight 914 crashed, no survivors. This was a summary of the Pan Am Flight 914 accident that allegedly occurred in 1955. 914's whereabouts remained completely unknown, and the search was terminated. 37 years later, on September 9, 1992. This is Caracas Airport, the capital of Venezuela, far from Miami. Here an unexpected incident occurs. As the air traffic controller at Caracas Airport was checking the radar, the shadow of a plane that was not scheduled to land suddenly appeared. Moreover, the plane was approaching the airport. When the air traffic controllers visually identified the plane, they could not believe their eyes. It was a very old plane with a propeller engine rarely seen today. The air traffic controller in Caracas called out to the pilot over the radio. "This is Caracas Airport Tower, please respond." The pilot in the old plane responded, "Yes, where are we flying now?" The air traffic controller at Caracas Airport responds, "We are now approaching Caracas Airport, the capital of Venezuela. What is your destination?" The pilot replied, "This is Pan Am Flight 914 to Miami." The air traffic controller could not believe his ears. Miami and Caracas airports are more than 2,000 kilometers apart, a distance that would take more than 3 hours and 30 minutes to travel by plane. The pilot continued, This one is scheduled to land at 9:55 a.m. on July 2, 1955. The air traffic controllers at Caracas Airport are silent and confused by the situation. It is now 1992, and 1955 was 37 years ago. A plane that should have disappeared long ago is now right in front of them. Despite the confusion, the air traffic controller, concerned for the safety of the passengers and crew, allowed the plane to land and prepared for the landing of the unknown aircraft. Airport security was deployed as a precaution, and the plane approached the runway under the watchful eye of air traffic controllers. The plane landed as if nothing had happened and came to a complete stop at the designated spot. The fasten seatbelt sign goes off with a ping sound, and passengers begin to unbuckle their seatbelts. The air traffic controller calls out to the pilot, "Do you understand that today is September 9, 1992? The pilot does not answer immediately. There is silence between the air traffic controller and the pilot. Wondering if the year 1955 was a mishearing on the part of the air traffic controller? The pilot may be confused as to the meaning of the question. After the silence, the captain answers, "What do you mean by that?" The air traffic controller replies, "This is 1992, 1955 was 37 years ago." The air traffic controller could not believe his ears, but calmly asked the pilot for confirmation. The pilot suddenly changed his attitude upon hearing this comment. He asked the approaching rescue team to get out of the way and restarted the plane's engines. Without permission, he approached the runway and took off again. In a panic, the air traffic controller asked the pilot to stay on the runway. However, the pilot did not respond at all. The tower tracked the shadow of the plane on radar. Soon, however, it disappeared completely from the radar. Everyone present was completely at a loss to understand the situation. The only thing we could find was a calendar with the year 1955 written on it on the runway where the plane had flown away. Where did the plane that flew away again go? And was this old mysterious plane really the missing Pan Am Flight 914? This case has long been in the public eye. But the truth is, there is no evidence to support this story, and it does not seem very plausible. There is no evidence that the calendar even fell out of the plane. If it was the missing plane, how did the crew and passengers spend 37 years of their lives? And where did they go after they flew away again? The mysteries are endless. Some have even speculated that the plane entered the Bermuda Triangle and traveled back in time. What is the truth? Some people believe that this story is untrue for the following reasons. First, the name of the airport is different from the actual one. The airport in Caracas, Venezuela is Simon Bolivar International Airport, not Caracas Airport. The second reason is that the 1992 radar could not detect the 1955 plane. This is because in 1955, when the plane disappeared, air traffic control radar emitted radio waves to pick up the plane's response, whereas the 1992 radar emitted information from the plane itself, so there is no way the radar could have detected the plane. It is hard to believe that an airplane from 37 years ago could appear in front of us in the same condition as it was then. The truth of the matter is not known, but it is said that the disappearance of Pan Am Flight 914 was actually a fictional story published in the tabloid Weekly World News, and that there was no such thing as the disappearance of Flight 914 in the first place. Weekly World News was a somewhat infamous weekly tabloid newspaper published in the U.S. and Canada between 1979 and 2007. Weekly World News itself ceased publication in 2007, and since then, the articles have been updated on the official website. However, because such aviation mysteries capture the hearts and minds of many, the American Airlines disappearance is still covered by many media outlets. The truth behind the disappearance of Pan Am Flight 914 is still unknown to this day. Do you believe this incident really occurred? Please let us know in the comments section. Thank you for watching.